Hello again, everyone. It is time for our weekly Q&A, which is now at our Monday time. And it is a pleasure to be here with you. We already do have a question because someone actually lined up a question early. They asked if we take questions in advance. We're happy to do that. But I did want to say, for those of you just tuning in, if you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, put your comments below. I can answer questions as we go along. Now, we have a new call-in system. We actually have a typo there. We'll adjust that. www.callcrushingdoubt.org if you'd like to ask a question. You can come on video or audio. So we're very excited to have this function. You can as well type in your questions into the chat, and I will be happy to answer them. So for those who are new, or just, the people who are coming back and we need to brush up on what this all is, this is a Q&A on mind-body symptoms and pain relief. I had 8 years of back pain. I'm sure, the people who are familiar with me are going to get sick of hearing that, but I am going to say it over and over because I went through a process where I did not know what was wrong with me, and there was something clearly physical. So this is about real physical issues, but it is about how they start in the mind and become very real in the physiological body. So we're going to talk about all aspects of this. It's really going to depend on who asks what. And if the questions aren't rolling in so much, I'm going to talk kind of freely about how I think about these issues. So let's get to our first question. We had it from last week, one of our preloaded questions. Here it comes, right on our handy-dandy notebook. All right. I believe this is P to the @ sign. Took me a while to interpret what that person's sign off was. So what is the role of anxiety and or depression in mind-body stuff? Are they TMS symptoms like back pain or something else entirely? This is such a fantastic question, and it's really going to open the door to a broad conversation. But what I'd start off by saying is that, yes, I have come to see anxiety and depression as mind-body stuff. It used to be when I started off studying these things that I kind of saw it just more as, well, no, that's more psychology. That's what you would go to therapy for. But what I've come to see, and part of it is because I had truly physicalized anxiety, that can be a symptom just like anything else in your body. If you're feeling it in your body, that can be a mind-body symptom. I want to make a distinguishing point, though, between physical anxiety that you really feel in your body and the kind of anxiety that just goes in circles in your head where you're thinking, oh no, what's this going to be like? And if you're not truly anxious, then your breath won't change that much, your heartbeat won't go. But if you're truly anxious, those things change. Not necessarily the breath or the heartbeat, something. When I have anxiety, I actually feel it like in my chest. It just feels uncomfortable. And when that's the case, this is a mind-body symptom. Actually, Courtney, can you put that back up on the screen? I want to see the question again because there was a second half of the question and I want to make sure to do it justice. Okay. Are they TMS symptoms? So TMS is what Dr. Sarno called a mind-body process. It stood for tension myositis syndrome. It was originally about back pain especially, but any musculoskeletal pain. His theory was that it was oxygen deprivation. I'm going to get into that next, actually, if there isn't another question. So, but they are symptoms just like that, and I treat them as such. Actually, if you go to my video about anxiety, the how-to, which we have on Fridays, this Friday, we're going to have a how-to on depression. How do you deal with depression? How do you recognize it? How do you cope with it? One of the key elements that I said in the anxiety video, though, is that if you can identify the specific feeling that's behind the anxiety, then it can reduce the actual anxiety. I just had this happen recently. It was, I get this stuff. I get anxiety a lot at night if I'm going to get it. And that's very, very common for people. When I get that, though, and it's not going away, what I know is I'm not getting to the emotional, the cause, the emotional underlying cause. If I'm not getting to that, the symptom's not going to go away. The other night, I considered something I had never considered before. I'm not going to get into it so much yet because I haven't even processed it for myself yet. You can hear about it later. But when I got to it, the anxiety went right down. And the next night, I did the same thing. I said, okay, same anxiety. I'm going to try thinking about that particular thing. Now, it's really important that I say this. I didn't even have the answers. I just was thinking about the right topic. And it was as if my body was like, good, you're on to the right basic idea. Now I'll leave you alone. Go ahead and think. So we can get back to that. We do have a question coming in from Karen Isaacs. Karen, good to see you again. Thanks for coming on. The question is, acid reflux went away years ago. So she had acid reflux. It went away years ago after I went to a nutritionist and started to eat clean. Twice since I suffered burning in the chest. My body can't tolerate food, or I was so mad at myself for indulging. Fantastic questions. And actually, this captures something about the mind-body experience that I want to highlight. We all have questions about what it's about. And there's pretty much always more than one explanation for what it might be. This is how we get confused. Meanwhile, we're going to see doctors. Doctors are wonderful for life or death things. They're wonderful for explaining how physiology works. There's all kinds of things doctors can do, but they don't tend to know about the mind-body process so much. The way they tend to know about it is that stress causes physical issues, but they leave it very general. So, Karen, your question is a good one for multiple reasons, but one of them is you had all of these questions as to, well, what was leading to this? I do have a story that I'm going to share. It's about acid reflux, although it was not my story. But I was working with somebody once who had acid reflux, and we actually made it go away in one session. Now, I want to own this is not the way it typically goes. So if you have a process that has taken you a lot longer to go away than one session, don't freak out about it. I just happened to hit on the right idea. I'm not even going to share what it is because this person hasn't given me permission to do that. Hopefully they'll come on the show and talk about it at some point. But the basic idea was we hit on the right emotional idea and it went away. So, Karen, your body can tolerate food. That is the kind of thing that is a big red herring. People talk about celiac and actually, this is a funny story. When I was working, my brother and I were on vacation. Our families were on vacation together, and he was having back pain. And he had had back pain for about 4 months. And he had been very skeptical of my ideas. In fact, he trained as a medical doctor, graduated from medical school, ultimately decided not to practice medicine. He's a writer now. But he talked to me about back pain, and he finally said, okay, just tell me. I got to know. So we talked, and we talked for a good, I'd say for the full 2 weeks. We had conversations every day about what was going on. I do see your question, Mike P. We're going to get to you in a second. We talked for every day for those 2 weeks. And slowly the back pain started to come down. And that helped him believe. So I worked on the doubt. And I just calmly brought in science and logic. 2 weeks later, I get a call from him, or maybe it was a text. And he said, can lactose intolerance be a mind-body thing? Now, listen, I'm not going to say that all lactose intolerance is a mind-body thing, but a lot of times it is similar to what Karen's bringing up. And he said he challenged it the same way he challenged the doubt about his back. So after curing his back pain, 2 weeks later, he was not lactose intolerant anymore. He was able to just eat a piece of cheese without lactate, no problems whatsoever. And he had pretty consistent problems with it. So this is the other thing. What we believe about our body can manifest. So I want to address one other thing before getting to Mike's question. Karen, you're saying, were you so mad at yourself for indulging? I don't think it was that. I think the body is the most empathic entity that you will encounter. Your body is not punishing you. I know it feels that way because the symptoms are so awful. But your body is actually trying to communicate with you. And it's not going to get mad at you for indulging. even if you're mad at yourself for indulging, the body's not going to punish you for it. It's actually trying to tell you something important about your psychology. So Karen, hopefully I answered the question, but circle back if I missed anything in there. We have a question from Mike P. Welcome back, Mike. All right. What can I do to reduce doubt in fully eliminating symptoms? I've made progress and continue to make extremely slow progress. I know it can feel that way, but I don't know if knowing other people have fully recovered helps me. Really great question. And I'm going to get to why that is. Let me see if I can do it justice. And then Mike, definitely follow up if I don't get to it directly. So one of the reasons it doesn't necessarily help you to hear that other people got better is because one of your doubts, actually probably the most common form of doubt, once people have accepted a little bit about the mind-body process, is can I make myself get better? There's doubts about you yourself. So when you hear other people did it, it's like you go on a Facebook page and everybody's like, my life's great. My life's great. My life's great. And you're like, what? Why? Mine's not great. So it actually adds to your doubt that other people have gotten better. It makes you wonder, well, if they got better and I'm not, it's just going to add to the sense that your symptoms are different somehow. So hopefully that answers your question. I can say more about it, but the key is to bring your doubt all the way down to zero. And we've just got to keep working at it. There's no way around it. It's your mind we're working with. And we have to know what questions you have, what doubts you have. Try to be patient with yourself. Mike, you've given me permission to speak about you coming on before. I say this all the time. These meetings, of course, are confidential, but if you give me permission to say that I do know you and we've worked together, and Mike gave me that permission last week, so I assume it's still okay, Mike, but please tell me if not. The basic gist, though, is we've got to work with your mind. And one of the things that I said to Mike was the smarter you are, the more chance there is that it could take a long time. Now, I should say that does not mean if you got cured fast, you're not smart. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that being smart can lead to lots of questions. It can lead to lots of doubt. And ultimately, some people have more doubts than others. For those of you listening and haven't already done so, please click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and put your comments below. Also, click like. It helps us with you getting noticed by YouTube. When we get likes, when we get subscriptions, when we get comments, these things all help YouTube to recommend us to other people. And so it's a big help. If you have friends who can come in and like it, that's fantastic. And subscribe. We appreciate the support. All right. Another question from Kim Herwick. Why do my symptoms show up at the same time every day? The questions on this are just brilliant. I love it. And one of the reasons I love it is you're helping me go to different parts of the mind-body process that I wouldn't necessarily think to talk about right now. So, Kim, listen, it can be varied why symptoms show up at the same time every day. So I'm going to talk about a couple of types of examples. If the symptoms are showing up at the exact same time every day, you might want to think about what's the activity. If they're showing up at lunch, for example, some people, let's say they're working a job. This is just out of thin air. I'm not saying this applies to you, but if people are at work and lunchtime is a social hour and they never felt good socially and they're getting the symptoms at lunchtime every time, well, it's usually an emotional issue. When the timing of the symptoms and a new uptick of a symptom or a new symptom comes up, you want to think about the timing, the activity you're engaged in, and whatever you're feeling in that is probably playing a large role. One potential exception to that is for people who have it happen either first thing in the morning or right before they go to bed at night. And I will tell you why. We've got a couple of other questions coming up. So, Mike, I'm going to get back to you. You have another question, and then Taryn. Questions coming up. So, we got Mike P's question coming up right now. Let me finish up on this one thing. It's okay, Courtney. Just, pull that question down. We're going to look at that in a second. You're too early. It wasn't your fault, Mike P. Okay. For people who are waking up with symptoms, there is a chance that dreams are leading to this. So that's something that you want to try to get aware of. And I know for some people, they're like, I never dream. And other people are like, I dream all the time, but I forget them immediately. One thing you can do is to rehearse the dream. Write it down right when you wake up. Dreams disappear pretty much within 10 seconds of waking up. You might get reminded of it later. If it was particularly vivid, you might hold on to it. But those kind of things can lead to symptoms at the same time. Nighttime symptoms also can be about things like that, because you've got people who are getting ready to go to sleep. This is a time when the unconscious world, we know it's coming. So those are times that can be repetitive times. But Kim, I would say the symptoms show up at the same time every day for two reasons. One, either an emotional cause, or two, an expectation. It's very important that I say that. It does not have to be an emotional thing. It could just be, I hurt every day at this time. Now you're primed for it. And you show up at that time. What you're going to need to do is challenge the doubt that if I'm aware of this, this could change. This time of day could change. I want to get back to that question more if I didn't answer it enough. All right. If you go to www.callcrushingdoubt.org, you can come on through video or audio. So I wanted to throw out that as an option if people would like to do so. Okay. We are ready for Mike P's next question. Do I just rely on faith that since I've made progress, it's likely I'll make more? The idea of why would I not get fully better is difficult to accept because I have no proof of that yet. Mike, I've loved working with you for multiple reasons, but one of the reasons is that you really illustrate the tremendous logic that people actually are bringing to the table. So, no, I would say we do not want to rely on faith. I would say we want to rely on logic. Okay? So there is a logical thing that if you've made progress, it is likely you'll make more. But are you really going to be convinced by that? No, there's not a chance. So you don't have to worry about should you do one thing or another. We have to find what works for your mind. So the fact is, if that's not going to work for your mind, you throw it out and you get something better. I would say then maybe you come to me, you ask a question, or maybe you're reading a book, or you want one of my PDFs. I have been talking about my PDFs. Those are available. I have one that is Mind Body Basics, which is just how I think about things. And these PDFs are available for a small fee. There's also an action steps one that tells you some things you can do. So, Mike, your question there essentially is, what should I be doing? You could ask, why would I not fully get better? And I think that's a great question. But you already answered the question because it doesn't work for you. It's too difficult to accept. What I would say is, if you got better from information, then there's a chance you can get better from new information. So I think for you, you just need to know new information is coming. Let's pick up a question from Taryn. All right. Can an actual injury like one seen on an MRI persist or not heal because of psychological stress? Great question. Yes. The answer to that is a definitive yes. I'm not saying that's always going to be the case, but it's very, very common. When people have an actual injury, there's a couple things that happen. There's a physiological process that needs to heal. And doctors tend to know how long that's going to take. So when it drags out longer, the question becomes, why is this person taking longer to heal? Well, often the answer from a mind-body perspective is that you are worried that it's going to take longer to heal, or you don't feel confident that it's going to heal, or you feel primed for it to hurt. It's actually similar to Kim's question about the timing during the day. When you have an injury, you now have a site that the mind-body process can pounce on. It's got a plausible excuse to be there. I think Taryn had another question. Let's pop that up here. Not coming up yet, so let me scroll up and see. Another question. Can there be a tear or injury on an MRI that is not actually causing pain? Do we have imperfections like this all over our bodies? Man, Taryn, you are the best. These questions are just amazing. They're just loading me up to be able to talk about things I'd want to talk about. So, can there be a tear or injury on an MRI that is not actually causing the pain? Yes, that is actually true. It sounds hard to believe, but Do we have imperfections like this all over our bodies? Yes. The body begins to degenerate in our 20s in all sorts of ways. And this is how we need to start thinking about it. We need to start thinking about it as the inside of your body is no different than the outside of your body. So wrinkles or freckles that develop over time or thinning hair or graying hair, these things, they don't hurt. Your body changes. Your skin, every cell of your body changes over within 7 years. So there are major changes going on in your body. And there's all kinds of things that people are seeing in images that they're assuming are causing the pain. I can't blame them because it is potentially logical. But the fact is, you could have herniated discs or wear and tear or even an actual tear of a ligament that is not actually causing pain. I once worked with somebody, he had a labral tear. They told him he was going to need surgery on it. I said, listen, based on what I know in the mind-body work, that should be an incidental finding. So what you could do is you could kind of test out this idea. I'm pretty confident that this is a mind-body issue. He went back to weightlifting. It didn't hurt him at all. This was the same day. Now, again, these are some rare stories sometimes, but the fact is, when you're confident, same thing with Kim's question about the time of day. If you can get confident that that time of day doesn't doom you or that injury doesn't doom you, that's important. But to Taryn's point, there really can be times where they will look on an MRI and they'll see a tear. But I talked to some of my medical school friends about this, people who went to medical school. They're actual doctors. They're not in medical school. They're more qualified than that. But what many of them have said is that when doctors look at these MRIs, they're actually inferring a tear. They're not necessarily seeing one. Now, if it's truly ripped in half, yes, that's going to need to be repaired, and that's going to need to be repaired surgically. But a lot of times what they're doing is they see maybe some inflammation, and they're saying, well, listen, if there's inflammation, there's probably a tear there. The doctors are not telling you this not to hide it from you, but they're just doing their best to answer what it is that they're seeing. And a lot of times in their training, they're not getting trained for anything but that. We've seen this in videos of people I've interviewed in the mind-body field, that a lot of times people are just not getting the training. We're actually going to have, I believe it's in 2 weeks, I interviewed a woman who from Nashville who's in the mind-body field. And I'm really looking forward to having her on. She talks about this exactly. Okay, we're going to move on. We've got a question from Blackbirds. I like that name. Is that Beatles reference? I hope so. Love the Beatles. What do you suggest for pain that returns every night while sleeping? Oh, great question. Okay, this is a bit of a follow-up to what I was talking about with Kim, that when you've got pain that's especially at night or especially while you're sleeping, this is related to unconscious experience. Your mind is still churning. It's thinking about all of these things. So, Blackbirds, the thing that I would recommend is to pay attention to your dreams. That's one thing. If you're not having dreams, though, all is not lost, because one thing you can do to get ready for sleep is to spend time thinking about the right issue before you go to sleep. I had this conversation with somebody I was working with recently, and she was saying the same thing. I get symptoms primarily at night. What can I do about it? And if I'm supposed to be engaging with my unconscious mind, how can I do it when I'm out cold? Great questions. So the thing you need to do is spend a little bit of time. Give yourself some extra time, maybe 15 minutes, to think about the themes of the day. What were the major themes that hit you hard? What are the major themes that you know fit with your mind-body process? And they can be very sneaky. So you want to pay close attention to them. I would say spend a little bit of time processing. When I just had the interview with Georgie Oldfield, and in that interview, she talks about the fact that she had a traumatic experience, and then months later, she had a little bit of a scare, but she didn't process it at all. She went straight to sleep. and she woke up with a severe neck spasm. She thinks, and I'm totally inclined to agree with her, that if she had spent the time processing that she wouldn't have had that experience. And that's usually the case. So I would say pay attention to your dreams, look for the themes. Wow, that rhymed. And in the meantime, you want to spend some time before you go to bed thinking about what might be on your mind. Okay, we are jumping to QF. Best ways to reduce stress. Oh, wow. So that's a broad question. I'm going to do my best to answer it. The first thing I have to say is that this is going to really annoy people, but it really is a depend kind of thing. This depends, because I can't tell you how to reduce your stress, because if I told you how to reduce your stress in the way that I do, it might not work. Like, I don't think you probably don't want to go play full court basketball. That's what I want to do. That's a way to reduce stress. But I will say this, we can generalize. Exercise is a great way to reduce stress. If you're only doing exercise, though, that can open you up to trouble. So I would say the best way to reduce stress is to have a balanced approach. You want to have a couple of things that you do. I would say exercise is one of those things. I would say emotional processing is another one of those things. But listen, either one of those things can lead to stress also if you overdo it. So don't just drive to exercise and exercise and exercise until you're, trying to run an Ironman, and then you're all stressed out. If you start getting stressed out by your things that are supposed to reduce stress, you need another one. This is why you need balance. So emotional processing is another one. Connection with other people can be another one for some people. There's the whole extrovert introvert thing. Some people need to get away from people. Those are the introverts. They get the energy from themselves. So what I would do is make a list of the things you like. But there is one thing I would say that is the number one rule for reducing stress. And that is you need to give to yourself more. I'm not talking about like being a glutton, but there are many, many times where we just are not giving to ourselves enough. This could take the form of, if you're working like crazy, take me, for example. Let's say I have back-to-back sessions, and I've scheduled it in such a way that's really stressful for me. Well, I'm not giving to myself. I could say, you know what, let me give myself a half an hour in between, so that the 4 sessions are broken up a little bit. I will do a better job. I'll be less stressed out. That's a giving to yourself. There's another way to give to yourself, which is allow yourself to have whatever feelings you want. We were just talking before the show. I was talking with Courtney. She has a kid. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about Courtney. You shut me down if you want to, but I have kids too. Anybody who has kids understands kids are the best, but they can also cause a lot of stress. And one of the stresses is the guilt we feel about the feelings we have. So another way to reduce stress, QF, let yourself have whatever feelings you have. You could feel like you want to kill somebody. You're not an axe murderer. You're not going to go do it. So let yourself have some things. Okay, let's see what else do we have here. From Taryn again. Does a herniated disc then not hurt? Okay, great question. So a herniated disc should not hurt. It is an incidental finding. There have been study after study after study that show there is no correlation between herniated discs and back pain. So when did we start discovering this? In the 90s, we started studying asymptomatic people who were having no pain whatsoever, and their MRIs were every bit as much train wrecks as people who were hurting. So science and logic tells us, no, they do not hurt. The only potential exception to that is when a disc herniates. Right then, it might be in relation to some physical event. But I will tell you this, that pain should go away within the day. It's really not that bad. So I hope that answers your question, Taryn. The fact is, when I answer these questions, I'm giving you the answers, but you have every reason to doubt these things. You've heard lots of different things. So I would say, trust me over time. Keep coming back and find what makes sense to you. Okay. Sunshine and Coastline says, can you define emotional processing, please? Excellent follow-up question. I appreciate it. So, what is emotional processing? Wow, these are some great, challenging questions. You guys are smart. Okay, so I would say what emotional processing is first of all, it involves spending conscious time with what you're thinking in an emotional way. So that it doesn't have to mean you're doing the best job with it or that you figured it out. It actually means spending some time with it. It's kind of like when people meditate, they set aside some time to do that. So if you want to set aside some time to emotionally process, what does that mean? It just means letting your mind think about it. Now, I will say this. You can become better and better at emotional processing. So what does that involve? That is another way of defining emotional processing, where it could mean you already understand some of your themes and you spend time thinking about how they might fit together. Another way to emotionally process, of course, is to go to therapy or to talk to a friend and just talk it out loud. Because when you hear yourself out loud, it really does change what it is that you're hearing. So I wish I could do it justice. Your question is a great one. The reason you asked it in terms of defining emotional processing, I imagine, is that there's actually so many ways of defining it. So I gave you 3 different ways to define it. Hopefully that is of some help. We can hone in as needed. Come back with more questions if you would like. Okay, Christina Carlton, how do you know when it's a conditioned response? I'm sorry. Before I get to this, I wanted to remind everybody, hit subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, put your comments below, and hit like. All of these things help us to get noticed by YouTube, which will then make it so that more people are getting the information they need. Thank you for supporting us. And also, anybody who wants to call in live, you certainly can. It's www.callcrushingdoubt.org. And you can come on audio or video. The number is right there below me. Okay, Christina Carlton. How do you know when it's a conditioned response versus doubt versus repressed emotions? Courtney, you're going to have to leave this one up on the screen because there's 3 different parts, so leave it up there. Okay, do we always... Oh, wow, lots of questions. Do we always have to find repressed emotions? Seems Sarno said that's not even possible. Fantastic question. Again, I love this audience just asks such intelligent questions. So what Christina is describing is actually the cauldron of doubt and confusion that we're all dealing with. Do you see how many things she nailed in one thing? This is what happens as we're trying to go through. These were the questions I was asking from suffering. I wasn't sure about any of this. So first of all, I'm going to start with the second half of the question because it's actually easier to answer. Do we always have to find repressed emotions? Absolutely not. Sarno says that's not even possible. I agree with him. A lot of the times it's not possible. It's actually one of the frustrations people have with therapy. We go and we talk and we talk and we talk. And please know that I think therapy is a great thing, especially if it's good therapy. Bad therapy is not a great thing. We can talk about that. At some point, I'm going to do a video on what I think is good therapy versus not. But, with people and repressed emotions, they can be very hard to get to. The good news is, from a mind-body perspective, not only is it not possible to get to those sometimes, because, like with me, was I going to get to some repressed emotion from 8 years before, that caused my back pain? Very unlikely. I had some ideas looking back. But the fact is, emotions are a third of the equation. So now back to your first question. How do you know whether it's a conditioned response versus doubt versus repressed emotions? Let me talk about what she means here. So a conditioned response means you're having a physiological experience that's based on some kind of condition. It could be the timing, like Kim talked about. It could be when I bend in this way, a kind of movement. These are conditioned responses that give you the expectation. If you're shoveling snow, so many people, if they come by, they'll say, lift from your legs. That gives you a conditioned response. We give each other conditioned responses. So that's what she means by a conditioned response. Doubt is a thing that can exist just in you, although conditioned responses can cause doubt. And repressed emotions are another thing. So let me lay it all out for you for how I think about this. Emotions are only a third of the problem. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of people read Sarno and do not get better. It's not because the mind-body issue is wrong or because there is actually a physical problem. What it is that emotions tell us what's happening in the moment. They tell us about the onset of the symptom. They tell us about an uptick in a symptom. Emotions are very helpful to understand symptoms that are moving around a lot or symptoms are changing. But what happens when you have a symptom that's just not moving at all? It never moves. It's always the same. Well, I would say that's not likely to be a conditioned response because the condition is always. That's not a very helpful condition to sort out what's happening. It's also not likely to be an emotion because you're not going to have the same emotion all of the time. The fact is, our emotions change our bodies as we go. If we get sad, we cry. It changes right then. And we don't cry forever. We cry while we're having that emotion. So to try to tease that out, Christina, I would say you want to look at the conditions you're looking at. Is it happening with a certain timing? That calls to mind maybe it is a conditioned response, and maybe you have a doubt about whether that's the case, like with Kim's timing or with it happening every night, or it happens with movements. If you're finding, though, that it doesn't move around at all, that's more likely to be a doubt issue. So let's just briefly review what you do with a doubt issue. There's 3 forms of doubt. There is this actually a mind-body issue or not? There's, okay, I believe it's a mind-body issue, but I'm not sure how well they can be cured. Mike P's question was a little bit about that. It was like, I believe it can get cured to a certain degree, but how do I know it can get cured all the way? And then thirdly, there can be a question of, can I get better? Are my symptoms too much, or is my personality too wrong, or am I not strong enough? Am I not smart enough? Am I too smart? Do I ask too many questions? All of these things can lead to doubt. So that's what I'd say about how you want to tease it out. This is part of what I do in my short-term consultations, and what I'll do in my videos is to give you a sense, like Christina says, so that you're not just awash in questions. You actually have something to go on about what's what, when. Okay, we've got another question coming up. Paula Saslow, can you prophesize your own TMS? Aha, a very interesting question. Sometime before my pain symptoms, a doctor asked me what was my biggest fear. I said it was having an illness no one could diagnose, and that was exactly what happened. Wow. That's extremely profound for multiple reasons. Can you prophesize your own TMS? So let's remember, TMS is another word for mind-body issue. It's the word that Sarno used. I'm very familiar with it. I used to use it all the time. Still sometimes do, but I'm trying to just keep it to mind-body just to be consistent. The nature of Paula's question really is, did I prophesize this just by worrying about it? So first of all, I have a lot of empathy for this question. This is a question of, did I do this to myself? One thing I want to say is, for the mind-body sufferers out there, none of you did it to yourself. There were a lot of conditions that had to combine to lead to a mind-body process. So, no, you cannot prophesize your own TMS. I know it looks that way, though. And let me say why, or how to understand it, really. You didn't prophesize that, but at some level you knew it. So what it is not a prophecy. What it is an awareness. You knew that fear could lead to things, and you were worried about that, and that made you more afraid. So the thing I want to say to the pain sufferers out there, though, is you are not the cause of your symptoms, but you are the solution. I want to say that again because it's a little confusing. If I'm telling you you're the solution, you're going to think, well, then I must be the cause. That's actually not true. There were multiple factors that led to you being vulnerable to a mind-body process. One is that you're human. Everybody's vulnerable to a mind-body process. In fact, everyone you know has had mind-body processes all the time. So there are plenty of ways that you can just say, hey, it's the human process. But here's the thing. If you've had a major mind-body process, the chances are that a lot of things contributed to that. Something about the way that you grew up, trauma in your background, people who are not understanding you, a very stressful situation in the current moment. And not only that, you didn't get here alone because society has failed us in this way. I'm not even saying that to blame society. I'm just saying society has taken us down some courses that we have major doubts about things, and we actually think things aren't true that are. For example, and vice versa. We think that herniated disc cause back pain because that's what we've been taught, and we've been taught that for 50 years. Maybe more now, actually. We're approaching 60 or even 70 years with that belief system. But if you look at all the literature before that, all of the knowledge people had, the knowledge that medicine had before we saw these images and thought we understood what we were seeing, people didn't think that before. So society has contributed to you being there too. You did not get here alone, and therefore you are not the cause. Your body is reacting, in fact. It is trying to tell you the story of your pain. You're not the one at fault. But the good news is you are the one who can solve the problem, because if we can get the right answers for your mind, you can get better. Great question. All right. What do we have next? Okay, I'm glad Christina said that was very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. And I really want to thank you all for coming on. You guys make this. If I'm not getting any questions, sure, I can talk about mind-body issues. It's not nearly as interesting as an actual interaction with true pain sufferers or people who are wondering about this process. So I really appreciate it. And I hope I'm doing it justice. Keep the questions coming. Okay, let's see. We've got another question. Ross the Boss. He is my co-host on MFSN, my sports show. After yesterday's football games, I feel depressed that the football season is almost over. What can I do? I love that question, Ross. Now, I'm going to be able to help you more than you think, actually. I can't make football come back, but there's a number of things that I can do. And one of them is that I actually need to highlight that depression is a mind-body issue. And what that means is it's actually temporary. It's not what you think it is. Depression is a symptom where you are convinced of a certain reality that's not true. Essentially, you're convinced that I won't be happy until football's back. It makes some sense if you're that big of a football fan, and you are. I've seen you. Yes, that can get you down. There are things you can give yourself to look forward to, though. We still got basketball. We got baseball coming up. But the main thing is you've got to let yourself know this is temporary. Do not trust yourself when you're in a depressed mindset. The antidote to depression is to give something to yourself, to recognize that it's temporary and give something to yourself. We have a video coming up on the how-tos of depression. So, Ross, I expect you to tune in. Okay. We've got another question coming in from Sunshine and Coastlines, I believe. Let's get that up on the screen. All right, well, I'm going to start reading it anyway. I'm clairvoyant. No, there it is. Can you give us some ways to get the gunk out of, oh, no, sorry, she quoted fix. I quoted wrong. What am I doing? To fix our subconscious. Some days I swear it's trying to sabotage me. Okay, wow. Great question. And the reason I'm responding this way is there's just a lot in it to answer. So what I'd love to do about this is I'm going to try this answer, but I want you guys to come back if there's any part of this that wasn't complete. And we'll get back to it next week, or put it in the comments below. That's another thing you can do. So there are many ways to kind of clear out your subconscious, and you're going to have to find what works for you. Meditation is one that can really work. I'm going to do a video eventually on the way that I meditate. I'm not the perfect meditator, but I do have my ways, and it can be very helpful. Emotional processing is another way where you grant yourself some space to really think about what has been going on. But the main thing I can recommend, and we'll have to talk more about this, is I think it would be helpful to you to alter how you're thinking about your subconscious altogether. Most of the time, pain sufferers are viewing the subconscious, even if they understand it's a mind-body perspective, they think of the subconscious as the enemy. They think that it is here to punish you, and the way that you can help yourself with that is to remember that this is a communication. you've got something important to say to yourself. So try not to even think of it as gunk. Think of it as something important. I know it's hard. It's certainly hard to embrace feeling bad symptoms. I'm not saying that. But if you can start to think of it as a communication, that can certainly help. I got a lot more to say about that one. I did not totally do it justice. So please come back or put it in the comments and I will answer more. Any of the newcomers out there, if you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like, and put your comments below. Okay, another question from Ross the Boss. Does massage help with back pain, long-term or just a quick fix? Great idea. You know what, Ross? Here's the issue with my answer. It actually depends on your belief system. There are people who get massages all the time, and if they believe that they're going to get better from that, generally they will. That being said, most things we do are a short-term solution. Even a mind-body solution is, in a way, a short-term solution because we've got to come back to it each and every time. The difference, though, is if you're thinking about it well, it's a much quicker fix, quicker than a massage and all that sort of thing. I think, though, the basic answer to your question is it's a quick fix, and it's even one that causes pain for people who are having a lot of suffering. So if you get pain from a massage, don't freak out. Doesn't mean that you have a physical issue that is structural. It means you have a physical issue, but it's probably a mind-body issue. If you've been cleared by doctors, consider the mind-body solution. You can check in with me or anybody else who specializes in this, but I'm here for you. Let's take one last question, and we will wrap it up for today, I believe. Let's see. Okay, so we've got another one from Kim. I need to get back to work ASAP for economic reasons, but so afraid to try it with the sensations coming in morning and midday. What can I do to become confident enough to go back to work? Wow, I really feel for you, Kim. This is this captures the essence of this podcast and this work. We're trying to help people who really need it. And that's what you're saying. You really need it. What I want to encourage you is, I understand how bad pain can be. I had it for 8 years, and I understand how unsympathetic people who don't have it tend to be. But the good news is, and this is one of my sayings, it can hurt, but it can't harm you. So the only thing you have standing in your way is the fear. You might have some pain, but you can do this. There is no physical limitation. As long as you've been to a doctor and you've got, cleared of any major findings, and herniated discs and all of these structural issues do not count, then you're clear to go. And what you're essentially in is you are in a battle with your own mind about whether you're going to be afraid. If you can be empathic to yourself, if you can grant yourself that being afraid is okay, if you can grant yourself that you might hurt a little, maybe even a lot at certain times, what you want to work on is the fear. I see that Jenny Sheen says she has got the same situation, so she was very appreciative of the question. Hopefully I did it justice. Jenny, certainly put it in the comments. I'm happy to answer. You can reach out to me at dan@crushingdoubt.org. Many ways to reach me, and certainly come back for the Q&A next week. We are going to have one final question. All right. Oh, and Kim gave me permission to say we are working together. Kim is a pleasure to work with. I mean, look, I love working with you people. This is the best patient population you can possibly have. You guys are so motivated to get better that you really listen and you put it into effect. I appreciate you all so much. Okay, last question. Please know you can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. It's @CrushingDoubt. And these are other ways to find us. Ross the Boss says the only thing to fear is fear itself. FDR. That's right. I actually use that in my upcoming book. It can hurt, but it can't harm you. That was my phrase. My personal Twitter, by the way, is @Dr. Dan Ratner. @Dr. Dan Ratner. Please feel free to reach out to me there. All right. Do we have a final question? Let's see. We have a question. which is how often should a patient get therapy, and how should I prepare for my first therapy session? This is from Ross, and he says, I can say he's crazy. Ross, you're not crazy. I love you. You're awesome. How often should a patient get therapy? I would say in general, a good place to start is once a week. Twice a week gets pretty intense, actually. You're thinking about these things almost too much. You get in. I'm not saying that's bad in general, but when you're starting out, I'd recommend once a week. And how should you prepare for your first therapy session? Well, a good way to do it really is if you have a friend who is a therapist, find out a little bit about what it's about. But I would say the best way you can prepare for a good first therapy session is make sure you get a recommendation from someone who knows that therapist well, because then you have a chance of being with a good therapist. Then you don't need to worry about it. It's not the patient's job to make the first session a good one. It's the therapist. Okay, guys, this was a blast as always. I hope that we got you some good answers. Keep the questions coming. We're going to be back next week at the same time, and I look forward to it. I thank you again. Once again, if you're new, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like, put your comments below. All these things help us to generate more interest on YouTube so that we can get the message out there, and that's really my goal. Again, thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to talking more next week.